Good morning, friends. Today we are going to discuss about business communication. As you all know, you people are future managers and you people are looking for a bright career. Of course, you people must have studied about communication when you people must have pursued your graduation. But why are we going to focus or why should we focus on communication skills? This is something which is very important, as we all know, that once when you are going to work as a manager in any of the organization, or even if you become an entrepreneur, you need to use your communication skills. With the help of communication, you build up relationship. There are a lot many benefits that we are going to derive if we are very strong at our communication. What are the basic things that we have to keep in our consideration while talking about communication skills? We are going to discuss about each one of them in detail in the due course of time. Today, we are going to talk about the first chapter under the subject business communication. And the heading or the title of this particular chapter is Communication and Overview. Every subject, every chapter that you people are going to study will definitely help you to strengthen your skills. We all understand that the companies are looking for those kind of people who are employable, who have strong command over employability skills. And one of the basic skills that we are counting on are the communicating skills. So therefore, once when we are talking about communication, it is not one single skill, it's a combination of different skills. So what are the key elements that are to be taken into consideration once when we are talking about communication? We are going to discuss about all these. Let us understand what is the learning outcome of this particular chapter, the first session of business communication, which is called as communication and overview. Moving ahead, when we are talking about the learning outcomes, we understand that communication is a process. This process follows certain steps. There are basic principles that we have to always keep in our mind whenever we are talking about communication. Also, there are certain channels that we have to keep in our mind when we are talking about communication. So what are those channels? What are those principles? What are those process steps that we have to keep in our mind when we talk about communication? Let us understand about each one of them in detail. Moving ahead, the first thing that we are going to discuss is the content of this particular chapter. In the content, you can see we are going to talk about the brief, that is what communication is, its introduction part, followed by the development in communication. Then comes the principles of communication, process of communication, basic forms of communication, and finally, there are certain myths. We have to break those myths if we really want to have a strong command over communication. Are you ready to move ahead with the first chapter, that is communication and overview? When we talk about communication, often people believe it's a one-way process. Some of you may say, no, it's a two-way process. If this is a process, what are the basic things that we have to keep in our mind when we are communicating? Is it only language? What kind of language are we talking about? If I am speaking English, does it mean that I'm communicating? Are other languages not important in our life? Can we communicate even in other languages? Apart from languages, is there any other thing that we have to take in our consideration when we talk about communication? Yes, of course. There are lot many things that we have to take in our consideration when we talk about communication. What are those things that we have to follow? Let us understand about each one of them in detail. The moment once when we are talking about communication, it's a process, it's a development of communication. Once when we say development of communication, we need to understand the words that are spoken. Also, we need to follow the gestures or the symbols. Not always what you say is important, but also what you express, how you express, why did you express in that way? Everything matters a lot in communication. Based on these assumptions, there are different models of communication which were developed right from the beginning, right from 1600, or I should say more earlier to that. It was Aristotle who has developed the first model, and then came the different people who gave on or who added different values. We are not going to anyways discuss the different models of communication, because as a manager, you understand that something which is new, something which is latest, something which is very important and value added is your important point. So therefore, without diverging or without taking you into the past and digging these stones and then finding out those things which are not at all important, let us understand what are the basic things that we as a future managers should keep in our mind when we talk about communication. Yes, there were different models that were developed. People started giving more importance to speech. They started acting based on the speech theory. There also came a cooperative principle where the sender was given importance, the receiver was given importance, and even what they are giving, this the part of message was also given equal importance. So the moment once when we talk about these, the principles of communication comes in our mind. So remember this acronym. It's a beautiful acronym which will help you to remember the principles of communication easily. Impress. Yes, of course, you heard me correct. Impress. The moment once when you hear the word impress, the first thing that comes in your mind is my appeal, my approach, my action, my way of presenting my own self. That has to be impressive, isn't it? Unless and until we are not impressive in our expressions, people will not have those lasting and long lasting impressions in their mind. So, therefore, you need to act in an impressive way in order to create that long lasting impression. What are the things, what are the key things that we have to keep in our mind when we are talking about the basic principles of communication? The first one is idea. Have a clarity in your idea. What you want to communicate should be very clear. If you are juggling with your thoughts, if you are juggling with your ideas, if you do not have that clarity of what I want to communicate, it becomes very difficult for you to present your thought or present your message in a clear way. Then comes the message. Once when you are having the clear cut idea, draft the message. Make it very simple, easy to understand. Do not use any such words which are difficult for others to interpret and understand. So, therefore, follow the idea. Based on your idea, define or draft your message. Then comes pause. Think for a time, think for a while, give a pause to whatever you have thought, whatever you have drafted as message. Because at times you must have thought that yes, whatever I'm presenting is right, but after taking a pause, when you recheck, when you go back to your thought, when you go back to your idea, or when you are rereading your message, you find that yes, this is something which is missing. Or I have exaggerated my points. Let me keep it in a better way. Let me keep it in a simple way. So you need to have a pause in your life. You need to have a pause in your thought. You need to have a pause before you're going to present that particular message. Then comes the receiver. Yes, there has to be a receiver. Without receiver, how are you going to communicate? Yeah, sometimes we do talk. Sometimes we understand that monologue is so important in our life. We talk to our own self. We become our own receiver of thoughts. So there is an acceptance. There is a person or there is a part of your mind which is receptive, which is listening to your thoughts, which is listening to your ideas. So therefore, you need to have a receiver. Apart from receiver, there are the next three things are very, very important. Please pay attention to what I'm saying right now. Empathy. This word empathy, though people speak a lot about empathizing, still it is difficult to incorporate, it is difficult to imbibe. Reason is very simple. We always try to sympathize with others rather than empathizing. When I say empathy, please remember that you are putting yourself in that particular zone or in that particular comfort area, how the other person is going to feel it. Believe me, this is very tough. You are sitting in an AC room, and outside the room, there's a high temperature, more than 40 degrees. Now, as you are comfortably sitting in a room, you may not find that difficult, or you may not feel the pain which a person is facing while selling his goods as a monger. So, yes, of course, you can understand this only once when you get out of your comfort zone and once when you also start moving in the hot, scorching sun. So, therefore, it is very important to understand empathy is stepping into the shoes of what others are feeling or aspiring or getting into their nerves. Then next comes the sender. There has to be a sender. Unless and until there is no sender, there won't be a receiver. So the sender need to have a clarity in his mind. What am I going to send? And security check. Check once again. There is a proofread principle which we have to follow every now and then whenever we talk about communication. Moving ahead, when we talk about principles of communication, when we talk about the IMPRESS acronym, we also know that there is a process. Once when we talk about process, we understand there is a sender and also there is a receiver. And when I talk about communication, be it a language or be it an expression, it could be in any form, but there has to be a message. That message has to be encoded and decoded. So what's when I'm talking about encoding of the message? That is done from the sender side. It is decoded by the receiver. For example, hello, how are you? The moment you hear me saying hello, how are you? You answer me, hi, I'm fine, thank you. What about you? So you could accept the sender's message, you decoded it, and then from the receiver side, you became a sender, you encoded a message which was grabbed, which was accepted by the receiver, which was earlier a sender, and so the process continues. It's a cycle. Imagine you made a call over a phone and you went on saying hello, but your friend did not respond to it with an answer saying, hi, I'm fine. Oh, hello, how are you? There was a mum silence. We believe that there is some problem in our communication because here silence says or silence states that maybe there is a problem. Maybe we could not connect to the right person. Probably there is a fault in the connection. So therefore, you have to respond. You have to reciprocate. That can happen only when the sender encodes the message, decoded by the receiver, and then decoding. After decoding the message, the receiver steps into the shoes of a sender and he sends in the message. Please remember, we have to avoid noise. If there is noise, it will be acting as disturbance. That disturbance has to be eliminated. If we really want to communicate with a proper flow without any distraction, avoid noise, avoid such kind of barriers or disturbance. Talking about the forms of communication. When we say communication, broadly it is categorized into two parts, verbal and non-verbal. When I say verbal, I divide verbal, or in general, in communication, we divide it into two parts. Verbal is those part or that part of communication wherein we use oral as well as written. That means I am connecting verbal communication with a language. That is the reason when I say verbal, it is completely connected with a language which is in form of words which can be understood by the person, and it gives or it infers or it delivers right information to the receiver. So once when we are talking about oral, oral is again practiced or applied with the form of two broad categories, speaking and listening. Right now, you people are listening to me, though I can't see you, though you can only listen to my voice, but still there is a communication. This communication is going to be one way unless and until I don't respond and I don't act as per your symbols or as per your communication part. So therefore, once when we are talking about oral communication, please make sure that there is a listening as well as speaking. When we talk about written, it is reading and writing. When it comes to non-verbal communication, it's the biggest part of communication. Often people get confused. They believe that verbal communication is more important than non-verbal communication. You are wrong. Only 9% of our communication is written communication. With the voice that is oral, it is only 38. Rest 55% of our communication goes on or happens only with the help of this non-verbal communication, which can be expressed with the different examples or with the different forms. It could be facial expressions, that is with the help of your face. You are expressing with your eyebrows, you are expressing with your eye contact, you are expressing with the smile, with the different expressions of your face. Then comes the gesture. Gestures are with your hands. Whenever you are using your hand in order to connect or in order to deliver some piece of information, it could be some symbols, it could be some sign, it could be some kind of illustration. Please remember, the gestures are broadly categorized into three. They are assemblers, which is assembling your thought. Emblems, they are some kind of signal. Say, for example, hi, how are you? So this is an emblem. Similarly, there are illustrators. I am talking about a square box. This square is an illustrator, and I'm showing it with the help of a signal, which can be a gesture. Then comes the body language, the way you stand, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you keep your hand, or the way you carry your body, the way you bend, the way you lean, everything plays an important role. So therefore, you have to understand that body language is very, very important. How far you are. Proximity talks about the language, the kind of distance that we have to maintain. If it is a very intimate relationship, there could be a distance of less than a feet. But if you are talking about certain relationship like mother and son or the other, then we have a distance of 1 feet or 2 feet. If it is social distancing, it will be of 6 feet. And if it is a public distancing, it will be more than 10 feet. So how much is the proximity, the kind of understanding of touch, your personal appearance, the way you look, the way you dress up, the way you are going to express with your dressing style, and even sometimes silence. Yes, you heard me correct. Silence also plays a very significant role when we are talking about communication, the basic forms of communication. This form of communication can be expressed in different ways. It would be formal or informal. When we talk about formal, formal is generally used when we are dealing with our clients, when we are dealing with our customer. Say, for example, your relationship with a teacher or a teacher's relationship with a student is formal. But when you talk about your relationship with your friends or even with your parents or with your relatives, it becomes informal. So whenever we talk about flow of communication, it may happen in two ways, downward as well as upward. If from the top, that is from the higher, from the superior or from the topmost level, if the message is coming and flowing from top to bottom, then it is called as downward message. Now from the down, if it goes up, it is called as upward. Let me explain you with the help of an example. Your principal gave an information or shared an information with the teachers. Teacher came to your class and shared the same information with the class coordinator. And the class coordinator detailed the information to all his friends. This is the downward communication from the topmost to the bottom. Now, there was a problem in your class, and that problem of the class was informed with the help of an application to the class representative. The class representative took the problem and handed it over to the class teacher. The class teacher then went to the administrator or to the principal in order to rectify or in order to overcome or in order to get that problem answered. So this is an information or which is moving from the down to up. So this is called as upward communication. Other than that, it could be lateral, it could be diagonal, or it could be grapevine, which are the parts of informal communication. Please remember, lateral or diagonal happens between department, from one department to the other. Grapevine communication, you have to be very cautious, you have to be very careful, because this can be something which is not at all in favor. You must have seen people sharing lot many information which can spoil your image, which can also create some kind of confusion. Such kind of communication are the part of grapevine communication. Kinesics, we have already studied that how far, how we talked about kinesthetic. Under the kinesthetic, we talked about the symbols, the signals, the cues that we give with the help of our body language. Now, coming to the last part of this particular session, when we talk about communication, most of us, we believe communication is nothing but we communicate consciously. But trust me, managers, if you are really going to enter into the world of corporate, often you will see that people communicate unconsciously. When you are presenting your presentation, people may agree to it and you will feel very confident. You will say, bingo, I have hit the right nail at the right point. But sorry, don't get carried away. Need to follow up, need to find out whether you really hit the nail in the right place. For that, you need to once again follow up, or you have to wait for that call of action. So therefore, often you have to keep in your mind that whenever we communicate unconsciously. We don't communicate consciously. The second myth is communicate primarily through words. Wrong. Most of the time we communicate even with the help of our body language. Remember, I stated with words we create only 9% of the impression. 55% of the impression happens. It's only with the help of body language. So if you believe with your strong words you are creating a strong impact, sorry, you are wrong. You have to change this myth. And the biggest reality that you have to face when you are talking about the corporate world is you have to observe the expression. You have to be very watchful when you are presenting. You need to watch eyes, you need to watch gesture, you need to watch the expression. You have to have a proper caution in your mind that I need to go even with the body language. The next one is word means the same to everyone. Again, you are wrong. Sometimes, based on the perception, the word and its meaning may differ. For example, if you are using certain words or certain signals or some kind of expressions which can be according to you is different, but the person whosoever is listening may take it in a different way. In our class activity, we are going to do this live activity. This live session is going to happen. Based on this activity, you can very easily understand that how words mean different to the different people. Then comes communication is a one-way process. Again, it's wrong. Communication is a two-way process, and this you have to keep in your mind. Never ever think if you are speaking well, that means you have done or you are through with your communication. No, you are wrong. You have to wait for the feedback from the receiver, and at that time, only once when you get the feedback, you can understand that yes, the communication was right. Finally, the way you are going to send the message or receive are identical. Whatever I am thinking, exactly the same thought will even come in the mind of the receiver. Or if the receiver is sending some message to the sender, you are going to reciprocate or you're going to interpret exactly in the same way. If you're thinking so, you are again wrong. So please work out on these myths. The moment you are going to work out on this myth, certainly you are going to step onto the first ladder of your communication. That means you become more thoughtful. You are going to be very keen when you are communicating, and you'll understand whether my communication is reaching to the right audience in the right way or not. When you follow these, then comes the complete package of communication, which can be very helpful. So, dear friends, in this particular chapter, which is titled as Communication and Overview, we discussed about the intro part of communication. Then we also talked about the developments of communication, but not in detail. Please remember, you have to go with the present model, that is two-way communication. All right. Followed by the principles. Don't forget the acronym IMPRESS. Then the process of communication, wherein we talked about the sender receiver, which is interacting or whosoever is interacting with the help of message, and there is a medium behind it. The basic forms of communication, both the verbal as well as non-verbal, and then what are the different forms, the flows of the communication. And finally, we discussed about the myths and realities of communication. That's all in our chapter number 1. We are going to meet and come across with another topic under the communication skill, which is a part of business communication, in the next class. Till the time, keep revising and keep improving your communication skill. Till then, goodbye.